Welcome to the party. I'm Sam Ekstrom of Locked On Sports Minnesota. Minnesota. Is Sam Darnold done?
I'm Luke Braun from Locked On Vikings. I'm Minnesota, fine with that.
Hey, this is Arif Hasan from Ward Left. I still have my voice somehow.
Luke Inman at Luke_Spinman. 52 days until the NFL draft. Let's talk about it.
Locked On Sports Minnesota podcasts. It's endless Minnesota Vikings talk with the diverse voices of your local experts. It's time for the Minnesota Football Party. It's your guys hanging out talking next level Vikings football. So join in with Arif Hasan, Locked On Vikings Luke Braun, Superior Sports Talk's Luke Inman, and Vikings insider Sam Ekstrom, plus the biggest names in Minnesota football for the Minnesota Football Party. And it starts now.
What's up? Welcome in a brand new week on the Minnesota Football Party on Locked On Sports Minnesota. It's all part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks for making us your first watch or listen today. Check out Locked On Vikings for your second watch or listen. Luke Braun with great daily content, and find our audio, the Locked On Vikings podcast feed. We get into an NFL Combine review of sorts today. A lot of sources saying that Sam Darnold will hit free agency. We react to that. We talk about combine fits for the Vikings and more. Prospects of the day from Luke Inman, all coming up on an episode that is brought to you by FanDuel. New FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. The combine is complete. Arif Hasan, where are you right now, by the way? Are you in Indy or are you home?
No, I'm in Minneapolis. Yeah.
Got it. Well, welcome back. Welcome back. We're glad you survived. There's a lot of nuggets. There's a lot of reporting that's come out of the combine, and this is where you get all sorts of reports, right? Because anybody, whether it's Arif Hasan, whether it's Ian Rappaport in a Starbucks, whether it's somebody in between, everybody hears stuff, and they put it out on X, and they try to make it gospel. So we're hearing a lot of marginal sources. And I think where there's smoke, there's fire, right? Everybody seems to be indicating that Sam Darnold's going to hit free agency. Not final yet by any means, but it's leaning that direction that there's not going to be a tag and trade. I think there's about 24 hours left to get that tag applied if they were going to do it. So it feels like this is it. It feels like sayonara Sam. Arif Hasan, would you concur with that vibe? Is that what the vibe you're getting? And how do you feel about it?
Yeah, that was the vibe I was picking up in Indy, and that's the vibe we've been talking about for a little bit. I don't think this actually changes much on our end. We've all been kind of operating under the assumption that it was likely the case that they wouldn't tag him. I know that a lot of people on social media kind of reacted to this report, rumor, whatever is in between a report and a rumor, with some consternation, like, you could just tag and trade him, and then you get like some trade compensation. And I don't know, like, it just felt like that was not super in the cards for a little bit. So I think that this doesn't really rock anyone's world in the NFL space. But yeah, I mean, like, I guess a lot of people were just kind of hoping that even though, the void deadline had kind of passed and it'd be kind of difficult to, because like what ends up happening is if you tag someone, you have to reserve that cap space until they sign it and until you trade them. And I don't know, like, there's like a lot of uncertainty with that. You have to hit cap space deadlines at various parts throughout the season. So I don't know, like, it feels like this doesn't change a ton, but yeah, I mean, that was the vibe.
Yeah. I mean, Inman, ultimately the way I feel about it is that teams are not desperate to acquire Sam Darnold. He hasn't established himself as a quarterback that you get desperate about. And if you were going to, trade for Sam Darnold, you have to be a little bit desperate. You'd have to be really confident that this is the answer to all of our problems. If not only are you going to give him a massive deal, but also give the Vikings assets for him, I just don't know if Sam Darnold is at that threshold as a quarterback.
No, I agree. And you know what it kind of reminds me of? The situation when the Falcons had the tampering case around Kirk Cousins. And I think we all knew realistically once the dust settled, like the Vikings probably weren't going to get a free pick out of that. But there was just this like, hope and almost desperation that like, well, maybe we can just, they're handing out free picks. Sure, I want one. But you guys are right. Like this has always been the vibe around town, reading between the lines. And it's not like a shocker by any means. Again, having said that, the best case scenario would have been to be able to recoup an extra pick or two, especially in a year when you've only got one pick in the top, 90 picks or so pending where that comp pick ends up. So that was always a like pie in the sky dream scenario. And I think too, like in a league that's, pretty obsessed with quarterbacks, right? To have a guy like Darnold come in, have the type of year he had, all the stats he put up, 14 wins on his resume, and just watch him walk out the door and not get anything in return. It's kind of a bummer, but again, I'm not shocked. I'm not surprised. It always felt like this was the route they were going to go. And also, too, we've talked about the human element to this, too, not just the cap space and stuff like that, but like giving him the respect and freedom, Sam Darnold, that is, to kind of let him walk and do his own thing, which, that, if anything, too, you're trying to find some positives out of it. That's got to be a good look for KOC and Kwesi and the organization when you're bringing in guys every year so they know you're going to do right by them. So maybe it's not all a loss, but again, 4 picks, 1 in the top 90. Would have loved to have some more lotto picks come draft weekend, that's for sure.
Yeah, would have been nice, but Luke Braun, I think you forecast this probably wasn't going to happen with tag and trade, and I think that forecast appeared to be right.
Yeah, well, I can't take my credit for it because I just got that from the guys on Access Vikings who have reported this kind of all week. That not that the Vikings don't want to do it, but like Arif said, that the risk is too great and the amount of control that you have over the situation, you kind of sign it away when you apply that tag. Sam Darnold can just not sign it, and then suddenly your cap situation is screwed for the first week of free agency, those crucial moments where you're doing bidding wars on all the big players you want. Or other teams maybe don't play ball and don't give you the deal that you want, or they don't give Sam Darnold the deal that he wants, and then that's why he's not signing the tag. All that's completely out of your control. You can't do anything about that. There's still people, at least in like Locked On Vikings YouTube comments, that think that you could get a first or a second for Sam Darnold because teams are just so desperate to get him. It's pretty clear that that's not the answer that they got. And everybody at the Combine knows, whether they're supposed to talk to each other about it or not, everybody at the Combine knows what kind of deal that would have been, what kind of trade that would have been, what kind of contract that would have been. And I think the Vikings looked at that situation and went, this is not going to be easy enough to put together before it really hurts that we don't have that cap space. So let's just take our comp pick and walk away.
And you're kind of a comp pick guru, Braun. Is it going to be a comp pick when the Vikings are potentially going to be as active as they are? And I would assume bringing in far more than is departing in free agency. Is that even realistic to think that this results in a comp pick?
They will have to navigate that. So like they can ruin it if they play it stupid. So if they do end up not getting a comp pick or anything for Sam Darnold, I think that's something we can criticize. I'll put it that way. He is a compensatory free agent, but so is Cam Robinson. So is Daniel Jones. So are Byron Murphy and Cam Bynum. All those guys are also compensatory free agents. Some of those, you bring somebody back, that doesn't affect your comp formula. And if it's somebody like, say, Aaron Jones, like it, because then they're not entering the formula.
Right, yeah.
But yeah, I think like Harrison Smith wouldn't have counted. I don't know how Harrison Smith counts at all.
Yeah.
But if
yeah,
like
if you add
in, go ahead.
Well, no, hold on. Like in terms of the people that you sign, who counts as a compensatory free agent is kind of interesting, right? So people who are cut obviously don't count. So if you sign someone who's cut, that doesn't affect the comp pick formula. If you cut someone, they get signed, same thing, right? If you restructure a contract that adds a void, and that void hits earlier than the original contract was signed. I remember
Yeah.
this Everton Griffin thing.
Essentially, they have to play the amount of years you promised that they would play. That's called maximum possible term. If you sign them to a 4-year deal, it doesn't matter if there are void years on the end of it, but if you turn that into a 2-year deal by voiding out the last 2, it's functionally no different from cutting them.
Right,
as far
even
as
though
the
that player
formula is
got like
concerned.
the same amount of money, that's just
Yeah.
how that works. So, there are always like some complications here, but if you can identify who those are in free agency and target them a little bit more aggressively, you can kind of avoid some of that. I don't know
And trades.
and trades. I don't know who is available in free agency that is not a compensatory free pick that would be, or compensatory pick that would be worth pursuing in free agency. I haven't done kind of the full gamut of that kind of research yet. I'm sure they have. But like that's another way to kind of navigate this process. Also, if you sign someone in August or July, I think that because it was post June 1st, right? They don't count. So that's another thing that kind of gets thrown into the equation. So yeah, it's a curious thing to navigate. Hopefully that they've kind of got everything pegged. What's kind of interesting though is that teams are never 100% confident how the compensatory formula works out. Like there have been years where teams have been surprised because they're like, wait, we expected a third, why we get a fifth? It's like, oh, well, actually there's like an age element here. That if you're over like 31, you don't actually qualify for anything higher than a fifth. Just like stuff like that just shows up. It's like a secret formula kept secret from the teams. And so for us to kind of try to determine it, also kind of difficult. But yeah, it's kind of complicated, but ultimately, if you sign as many compensatory free agents as you let walk in who also get signed, then it kind of all zeroes out. So you have to be kind of careful with it.
You have to have a sense for how much money, and that means that like I think a lot of the free agency flurry that we're expecting, to move on to the Alec Lewis piece that you want to talk about, Sam.
Yeah.
He expects a free agency flurry, and I think a lot of those players are going to be on the lower end, and maybe specifically for this reason, to kind of keep themselves from adding a whole, because if you sign a player with a small enough contract, they don't count as they won't add to the compensatory formula. It is a complicated thing to navigate. I think it's one they absolutely can navigate if they play it reasonably, common sense. And if they screw that up, yeah, we could probably rib them about that.
But wouldn't screwing it up mean that they signed high-profile free agents? Are we going to be mad about that? Isn't
Not
that
necessarily. Shaq Griffin
cost
cost him like a fourth, I think, is what it ended up. It would have been if they didn't sign Shaq Griffin. So like,
I thought that was disproven.
It's just what factors into those decisions, right?
Yeah.
You want to sign a Shaq Griffin, you just have to know, okay, that's costing me a compensatory third. And sure, with some guys, that might be worth it. If you want to go get like the biggest dude on the market, okay, that might be worth it. But how worth it is it when the next guy, was on a void year contract and doesn't count toward it and is just as good? Like it'll affect those decisions.
Yeah, and at some point, like if you get close to or you calculate that you've hit the formula, you freed yourself, and now you can sign a bunch of guys because like they're not going to take picks away, right? So, if it gets to the point where the Vikings are just signing significantly more free agents than they're bringing in, it's not going to matter at all because like one or two here doesn't impact the formula. It's if you hit the balance and if you're over that balance, it really doesn't matter. So if it's a flurry of free agents and they qualify as like compensatory free agents and stuff like that, then who cares?
Let's get into the Alec Lewis notebook from the Combine next, because I thought this was probably the juiciest, most insightful compilation of reporting on the Vikings' plans. Some really significant takeaways that we're going to dive into after this on the Minnesota Football Party. And we're brought to you by FanDuel. NBA action is getting in full swing again after the All-Star break. We're approaching the playoffs. Timberwolves with a big win last night. And the NBA is a great place to get in the action at America's #1 sportsbook because of all the live betting options. If some team gets behind in the first quarter, you could bet on a big comeback with that live spread or money line. You can even stack live bets in a live same-game parlay. I'm also checking out some NFL draft props. They've got the number 1 overall pick odds, Cam Ward, -200. Vikings are interviewing him at the Combine. What do they know that we don't? You can make that wager at FanDuel, -200 on Cam Ward. If you're a new customer at FanDuel, bet $5, and if that $5 bet wins, you get $150 in bonus bets. Bet 5, get 150 at FanDuel.com. or the FanDuel Sportsbook app, which is so easy to use and pays you quickly when you win. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. All right, Minnesota Football Party. We're back on Thursday. Care 11 crew in on Wednesday for the special edition show. Alec Lewis wrote a great post-combine piece at The Athletic, theathletic.com. There was some great stuff in here. Kind of wrote it, capsule by capsule, about 6 or 7 big-time topics. Number one takeaway for me, the team was not satisfied with its defensive line. And I think to some extent we've talked about this, right? How nice it would be to have better interior pass rush. But in the second breath, we would say, well, the team kind of prioritized run stopping. They liked what they had. They served a purpose. This notebook made it sound like they're super, super gung-ho about adding pass rushing up the middle on the defensive line, up to multiple pass rushers. And then a name drop of Milton Williams and Javon Hargrave by Alec Lewis. That to me was interesting, that the team is like not at all okay with having the type of pass rush win rate they did with their defensive line.
Yeah, and the stat he uses that he flung out makes sense too. Like when Phillips and Bullard were on the field together, 222 snaps on passing plays, they had just under 25% pressure rate on those snaps. And that's not like a surprise. Obviously, that's not their bread and butter, so that makes sense. But that ranks in the bottom 10. So I'm sitting here going through all these defensive tackles coming out in the draft, and there's so many I like. But some of my favorites end up being like more of a nose tackle. Alfred Collins from Texas, right? Just like a big nose fire hydrant in the middle. But reading this article, it's such a reminder hearing that stat that interior pass rush is really, the emphasis and kind of name for the game for them and their top need at that spot. They've got, a lot of good first and second down run defenders outside of those two that they like too. The young guys, Jalen Redmond, Taki, there's a couple in the mix. It feels like they're trying to develop, but they need that pass rush element to complement those guys. And yeah, I just thought Alec did a good job of reminding us why. It made a lot of sense.
Yeah, and he also mentioned in a later bullet point, who was it? Jalen Redmond, Levi Drake Rodriguez had the quote unquote arrow pointing upward, I think is the phrase that.
And
Alec
Jay
used.
Ward in the mix too. Yeah, Dwight McGlothern in that mix too. Yeah, watch out.
Jay Ward, sneaky safety option. Other takeaways, guys.
It seemed interesting that Byron Murphy's agent seems to want Murphy to hit free agency and test the market to get his full value. That'll kind of complicate what the Vikings' plans are. That was in the piece. They also mentioned he also mentions a couple of times throughout the piece that hey, cut candidates are in play. So that conversation we just had about about voiding your compensatory free agents and stuff like that, that matters, right? I think that the Vikings are paying attention to that kind of thing. So that's something to kind of pay attention to. It seems like evaluators are pretty happy with, or content, I should say, with both the J.J. McCarthy and Dallas Turner situation from the outside looking in. Those were kind of nice things to throw in there. Who's to say, if that ends up panning out? But of course, having people who've hey, I looked at McCarthy's tape against, the Raiders, and I was really, really impressed with it. I didn't expect it. That's a nice thing to see from an external source that's not in the Vikings and hasn't attached themselves to the draft takes here in the media, to be kind of really confident about that kind of guy, and also to be confident about Dallas Turner, because I think that's really going to, not that this actually matters, but it's really going to define how people interpret this last year's draft class, is how those two will perform in year 2, right? And so how people have reacted to that seems to be generally pretty positive outside of the Vikings. So yeah, I think that all of those are pretty interesting. What I found interesting though is, you already mentioned it, multiple interior defensive linemen potentially being added, right? That was in the Lewis piece. So yeah, he mentioned Milton Williams. That would be an outstanding get. Mentions Javon Hargrave, which would be a very intriguing get. But when you kind of go down that list of interior defensive linemen, especially those with pass rush capability, there are a lot of potentially intriguing candidates in free agency that could potentially be cut. You add that with maybe they get a developmental nose in this year's draft. Like you said, Luke, there's a lot of really great noses in this draft. Then the Vikings could be setting themselves up both kind of short-term and long-term, depending on how they play that position in free agency.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Hargrave.
Love the feedback on Dallas Turner, by the way, too.
Yeah.
That's very encouraging to, again, have somebody external, like an NFC evaluator, not
That's
a Vikings person, be like, yeah, he'll be fine. Compared him to Nolan Smith, which people might have mixed opinions on, but
yeah,
no comment.
It's a similar situation, though. Not the play. It's a similar.
But like saying, like, he had 11 sacks his second year. Dallas Turner could do the same thing, like pointing to the good parts.
Yeah.
Also, buried in the kind of extra nuggets, like miscellaneous section at the end, a new punt returner is a primary target that we all kind of penciled in Brandon Powell as that until otherwise proven, but that seems like maybe they're looking that way. And that Ryan Wright is not guaranteed to do the thing. I actually talked to Chris Cluey on Locked On Vikings today, so you should go listen to that show, and talked a little bit about Ryan Wright and a hang time issue that he has that really sells some of the gunners out to dry sometimes. And he expects that he's like, yeah, that's the kind of punting that gets you competition like a real competition the next year. So there could even be like a late draft pick or something, depending on what kind of picks they end up with, or an undrafted guy that comes in to push Ryan Wright.
Is that all you talked to Chris Cluey about?
No, absolutely not. Nope. We talked about exactly what you wanted us to talk about. So go listen to that show. Also, some pretty crazy stories from the 2009-2010 part. His
juicy.
perspective on when he joined the Vikings like the week of the Love Boat, and he found out about that on the news with everybody else.
Amazing.
As well as some juicy nuggets about the scramble to get a game ready at TCF Bank Stadium, and boy, there were some mistakes were made. I'll put it that way. I'll tease it that way, but go listen to that one. It's the very end of the show.
Dang. Make Locked On Vikings your second listen today, folks, for good reason. How about this one that was buried in there? Go ahead, Luke.
I was just going to say a lot of love for Durante Jones as well, which we talked about, the possibility of losing Brian Flores this offseason. Seems like maybe sooner than later he'll end up getting a head coaching job. Just feels like Durante Jones, very highly respected, not just inside the building, but out in the NFL as well.
This stood out to me. This is the first extra nugget. Quote, the Vikings want to re-sign Aaron Jones, but even if they do, they are seeking more of a by committee approach. Expect the Vikings to take a running back in the draft. I guess that's not totally unexpected. If they brought back Aaron Jones, I would have expected them to pair him with a rookie. But when they write it out by committee, I guess that's the kind of language that Aaron Jones might not want to hear as he hits free agency, because that is not going to increase his value, I would think, very much at all. So that could be a negative sign in the effort to re-sign Aaron Jones. Do you guys read it that way?
It could be. I don't know how many options he'll have in free agency that would prevent a committee situation. I don't know that he's going to be a bell cow anywhere. If he does have that opportunity and can get commensurate pay for that kind of work, all power to him. Absolutely go seek it. But like, I don't know that he'll have that available to him. So yeah, I think it's a little bit of a barrier to potentially re-signing him, but I actually don't think it's going to be that significant because I don't think, the grass is going to be greener for him.
How about the quick blurb or note about they're not happy or satisfied, I should say, with the number of draft picks, but they're being strategic about the ways to generate more outside of just trading back. What does that mean?
Well, I'm glad they said that. I'm glad.
Right.
Yeah,
we're going to be smart
comes
up.
Yeah, comp picks comes up, which I think goes to the conversation we were just having about, they're going to, like, over the course of the next 3 years, if they can get it back to an average of 6 or 7 picks a year, like, that's kind of a way to make up for it rather than scrambling to make sure that you have exactly 7 picks in every single draft. Like, you don't need to do that at the cost of, value and efficiency. So, yeah, like, working the comp pick formula and, yes, trading back, it's probably going to end up fine.
Yeah, which also might suggest that, because I know that there's this rumor that Jonathan Allen's going to get traded. Rumor, I don't even know. It's a very strong reporting that Jonathan Allen is probably going to
They
get
granted
traded.
him permission to seek, right?
Yeah. So yeah, rumors are wrong. But like, I don't know that the Vikings are going to be in it because of this like emphasis on being strategic with draft picks and stuff like that. But
I don't believe you. I choose not to.
You think the Vikings are going to be in it?
I choose to think the Vikings are going to be in it.
Alexander's asking, what would it take for you to be okay with the Vikings trading away their first round pick? What would you have to
There's
get?
probably a million scenarios where I'd be happy with it. It just has to be a lot at once. I don't like
a starter, like a really good starter,
a legitimate
at a position
starter.
of need. Yeah,
a relatively young starter too, right? Like,
yeah.
Like third, like going into the final year of his rookie deal, knowing that you would extend him, type deal.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Quentin Nelson, sure.
Nah, he's washed. I mean, not completely, but he's not what he was.
His
You're breaking my
teammate
heart
That
over and over
that
again.
happened
name
Aaron.
quick,
dropped.
man.
But like
Will Freeze,
I
Will
mean,
Fries. He was in the story.
yeah, he dropped the Colts card, which would have been kind of
Freeze or
interesting.
Fries? What are we going with?
I thought it was Freeze, but people have corrected me to Fries. Until it becomes a more interesting story, I'm not going to look up a pronunciation guide.
Sounds good.
But he's like good, so who cares?
I mean, last year I ran into the Jonathan Greenard trap when they signed him.
Yeah.
That was
Yep.
a big
Rip.
I was,
I think
big
we all
guru.
started with
I was
one
right there
Jonathan
with you.
Greenard the first time you
Yeah.
talk about him.
Yeah.
oh yeah.
I mean, like, like think about who he was swapped for. Danielle Hunter, right?
The Texans
Steven
football
Diggs?
party really stumbled into that one. All right. Other final nuggets from the Alec Lewis piece, which was really interesting. I mean, are we okay? So, first round pick, you'd be willing to part with for the right player. How are we feeling about team trade back? I mean, what I assume.
Sure.
Like,
I mean,
think
like
about,
it depends on
go ahead.
who's there, right? Like, I don't want to be like
Yeah.
really solid, but like, like largely speaking, I'd be pretty happy with it, especially if
I'm usually in favor of it in general.
yeah,
I'm
But
I'm
if there's,
almost
like,
always
don't
team
Kyle
trade
Hamilton
back.
this again, but
right, yeah, exactly.
Right.
But like, given that like some of the needs the Vikings have are projected to either be remarkably, deep classes, defensive tackle, running back, or that there's supposed to be somewhat strong crop in like the second round, like a guard.
Right.
Like, it feels like intuitively that this is an even better use case for trading down
Mhm.
than it typically is, and it's already typically quite a good argument. So, yeah, I'm team trade down. Obviously, you have to have someone willing to trade up. Now that that's a huge problem for the Vikings because they don't get a lot back when they trade down, so it's pretty cheap to trade up with the Vikings. So that might make things a little bit easier, but then it also makes the proposition for trading down a little bit more annoying.
Right.
Kind of a little
No,
bit of
that's actually a good point. Yeah, I'd like to go back and look at all their trade downs and just see kind of what value or not great value that they got. That's an interesting
Jameson
point.
Williams, Christian Watson. Who's to say?
Yeah.
Pick 24 is worth on the Jimmy Johnson chart, which is not what everyone uses anymore, but Vikings pick would be worth 740 points, which is about the equivalent of a second and a third. So who has a surplus second or a surplus third who'd want
Not
to
even
jump
a
up to
surplus.
24?
Like, it would just have to be like someone willing.
somebody who just really wants a guy.
They
Yeah,
really want
God,
a dude.
Jackson Dart's really doing it for me.
You need that. Who's that tight end that's supposed to go like top 10? You need him to like fall because
Tyler
he's a tight
Warren?
end and everyone's
Tyler
afraid
Warren.
of Kyle Pittsing. Yeah, and then somebody wants to trade up from the second round to do it, and then it
Yeah, I
like
could see
and the
that.
Vikings aren't going to be that team, but you could trade to somebody who wants it.
gonna be Genty. Genty's gonna fall in like the mid-20s or something like that, and all of a sudden somebody's gonna trade up for him.
That would be
Vikings
crazy.
just slam him if that happens.
Yeah.
Would Tyler Warren be the most shocking Vikings first round pick?
No, I mean, there's a lot.
I mean, there's a lot of possible shocking picks, but that would
Okay.
Cam Ward would be
At
the
least
most
he's a
shocking
good player.
Vikings first round
I
pick.
mean, more
Both
more
because-
shocking.
See it
is-
coming. They interviewed
Yeah.
him in the
Yeah.
world.
if he falls down to 24, and that the Vikings of all teams are the ones that click the button.
At least
would-
Tyler Warren's like good. So I mean, yeah, shocking because like you don't need him, but like, wait a minute. If you're just gonna like take a random dude, you better be good. You better be a good
Love
football
that.
player for sure. What did I say? 52 days left. I mean, a lot's gonna change from now until then. But right now, and I think I mentioned this last week, I'm kind of like run up to the podium if Kenneth Grant from Michigan or Tyler Booker, the guard from Alabama, are there. But again, outside of those two, and again, a lot can change from now till then, but I'm always team trade back, like Luke and Arif mentioned. It's just not a science, as we know, and you just want as many lottery picks or scratch-offs as possible. So having only 4, I think, just increases the likelihood that they try to recoup a couple extra picks.
Yeah, I mean, you could pretty easily see the Vikings turning 4 into 7 or 8 if they get 2 picks back for the first, couple picks back for the comp pick third. I think that could become 7 pretty easily. When we come back, Inman's prospect of the day and combine studs who would look good in purple. That's next after a very short pause. All right, Luke Inman, keep the good vibes rolling with your prospect of the day. Now, I gave you an assignment over the weekend. I told you to look into Jordan James. That doesn't have to be your prospect of the day. I am curious if you've looked into him, though, because this is my day 3 running back draft crush. I'll
I
forgive
have
you
not.
if you haven't.
I have not. No, don't worry though. 52 days left. Don't worry. In fact, I don't even know what he did at the combine. We can pull it up right now. Maybe
I don't
you
know if he
that.
did anything.
I don't
Yeah,
think
he might have done nothing. Pro day guy.
Nothing. Okay.
He
Well, I
needs
just
that
pulled it
fast
up.
Oregon track. He needs that Northwest air.
Yeah, loaded group though, running backs for sure. It's going to be interesting to see where. I mean, it just feels like pick your flavor, right? Like the defensive tackles. You talk to 5 different quote unquote experts or just people studying the draft. They might have 5 different favorite day 3 sleepers for not just running back but defensive tackle as well. I'm going back to the cornerback position today. Trey Amos from Ole Miss. Showed up at Indy, 6'3", so almost 6'1", 195, 78-inch wingspan. Runs a 4.43, which is, I mean, all in all, not like crazy. Some of these guys, man, it feels like 4.3s are like the new 4.5 all of a sudden at the combine. But solid B+ as far as measurables goes for that position at quarterback, all things considering. Highly touted coming out of high school. Goes to Alabama. Stuck behind Terrion Arnold and Kool-Aid McKinstry. Both of those guys obviously drafted very high. Didn't play a ton there last year, but the talent was there. Goes to Ole Miss this year. I watch him. I just don't see a lot of knocks on him. I don't think he's got a super high ceiling like some of these top tier cornerbacks this year, like a Will Johnson from Michigan. But I think he's right behind that top tier cornerback group. I think he's got a really high floor. There's just not a lot of things he doesn't do really well. Just very solid. Fantastic forced miss completion percentage last year, which I think is always a really good indicator for that position because it just can show how good these guys are at getting into the, throwing window, disrupting the catch point, whatever it may be. So I like him as a high floor kind of guy, maybe end of round 1, but more so early round 2. Exactly what we were just talking about. Maybe a trade back scenario. Maybe he's one of those ideal candidates to kind of circle back if you do trade back into the, high 40s somewhere in there. And pending who they bring, obviously, back in free agency as well. But even if they do bring back Byron Murphy, let's just say, I think you need to get some youth into the pipelines in that cornerback room. You got to hit on a young dude eventually that you can develop because it's just been a while. Now, saying that again, sounds like the arrow's up according to Alec Lewis on a guy like Mekhi Blackman and Dwight McGlothern, but nonetheless, it would still be nice to just continue to add some youth and talent into that cornerback room. So, Ole Miss cornerback, put that one on your notes.
5-year guy, like Blackman. He's a little older. Kwesi showed he's not afraid of taking an old cornerback if he can play. I like that. I'm also curious.
An interesting journey. Yeah, 5 years, not to interrupt you. Interesting journey, but for 5 years, didn't end up playing like snap-wise as much as you might think. For just seeing, oh my gosh, guy's played 5 years, got a lot of tread on his tires. But yeah, nonetheless, interesting kind of journey through college for sure.
Has anyone done digging on Jahdae Barron out of Texas? Another 5-year guy, all with Texas.
A little bit, yeah. Not a deep dive by any means.
What do you want to know?
Really high.
I want to know if he's a first-round candidate for us because I love him.
Oh, he absolutely is. The question is whether or not he improved his stock too much at the combine. So first of all, he's like a super impressive. I mean, he did run fast, but like
4.39.
Generally speaking, his measurables all over the place were pretty good. That run was great. He's super impressive at the podium. I don't know if you saw, his interview or anything like that, but people really loved it. I don't know. Like he could be kind of like a nickel safety type. You move him around. He hits hard enough to play in the box, stuff like that. I like him a lot. I was like talking to someone about him, and he was just like went on and on and on about how good he is. And I was like, well, why isn't he your CB1? Because you got like Will Johnson CB1, and he's like, oh, well, he's just way too good. And I was like, okay, great. But like it was like very high remarks, like high grades from everybody I talked to, whether it's like, people in the media, a couple of people that, were scouting for teams, like they like him a lot. And, from a football personality standpoint, he seems to be kind of what a lot of teams are looking for.
I mean, his numbers are insane at Texas. I've got no issues with the conference he played in. Maybe a tad undersized height-wise, 5'11". It's not going to jump
off the page. A little shorter arms, a little shorter
That's
wingspan, yeah. But
what did I guess I should check
corner,
what was the combine measurement on him, because that might
29 and 5/8 inch arms, 73.5-inch wingspan. Showed up at 5'10" and 3/4, so just under 5'11". But Again, you got to take this stuff with a grain of salt. I mean, the film obviously trumps all this stuff at the end of the day, and honestly, for the most part, the limited stuff that I've watched, like the quote unquote shorter arms or shorter stature, didn't really seem to affect him that much at like the ball point, right? Top of stems, things like that. So, I mean, got to do a little bit more of a deep dive, but there's certainly a reason why he's so highly touted and being talked about as one of the top corners in the class for sure.
Daniel Jeremiah loves him. You know who else planted their flag on Jahdae Barron? Todd McShay said he's his favorite.
Todd going
all in on Jahdae Barron. Apparently his ball skills are like the best of.
Can I just say, just to respond to what Arif mentioned about just hearing him at the podium. I watched like 7 or 8 guys at the podium. I don't know if it's just like this generation that's been around being on camera so much, but like I loved like almost all of them. There's so many of these guys, and not to say that some of these guys aren't nervous, but it just feels like a lot of them are very comfortable up there and just comfortable in their skin, comfortable being on camera, comfortable talking to the media. Barron was one of them for sure, but it just feels like every year that we get into more media attention, the NFL draft grows, it gets bigger and bigger, and these guys just kind of get put on the spotlight. Again, not to say that some of them don't get nervous and whatnot, but Barron, including at least a handful of other podium interviews I got to see, a lot of these guys just seem very comfortable up there compared to what I remember, 8, 9, 10 years ago.
Yeah, that's a fair point. Good media training at these big schools too, I would say.
Yeah.
Chat's on one, and they are not lying. Sam, play the sound.
Hold on.
Been looking for the sound for like 5 minutes.
1.
Eagles are releasing 6-time Pro Bowl cornerback Darius Slay, per Adam Schefter's sources. Maybe a post-June release, but that would be the kind of guy that if you think he still has anything left in the tank and you want to bring him in, would not count as a compensatory free agent and would certainly help the cornerback.
Suppose you hit on 2 corners in the
high.
first 2 rounds, you're probably good.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead. Career high in what?
Yeah.
Career high in passes broken up this year, 51% completion percentage against. He had an insanely good year. I didn't know how much he played this year, how good he was. It's pretty good.
How old now?
34 years old. So this would be your Stephon Gilmore. This would be this year's Gilmore if you want him to be.
And similar to Gilmore, kind of like, sounds like he does still have plenty in the tank. He just has an age number you don't necessarily like, but not the signs of decline that you would expect at that age.
Other studs that you liked from the combine that stood out to you. I feel like it's harder and harder to really see how they stack up against their peers because not as many people are doing the full gamut of workouts. But what stood out to you?
I liked, I know that not a lot of people liked this particular crop of like Georgia players compared to like the last couple of years that we've gotten a lot of people out of Georgia. So, take all of that with a grain of salt. But, looking at some of these workouts, I liked Tate Retledge a little bit from what he was able to do. I thought that, his movement in the wave drill and stuff like that was pretty nice to see. He had a pretty quick 10 split of 1.72, which I think, if I remember, was like one of the fastest among all of the guards. I thought that it would have been nice to see a short shuttle from him, but he had a really, really quick 3-cone, so you can kind of maybe project really good agility from him. And then right next to him on like the jersey number chart is Caleb Rogers from Texas Tech, who had a really, really outstanding workout. So if I'm looking at guards, those are guys I'd pay attention to. I thought that they did really well. I know that a lot of people, and Conor Colby from Iowa. I mean, it's always a case that you got an Iowa guard doing pretty well, but another name to kind of keep in mind. And I know a lot of people really hated Tyler Booker's workouts, and looking at it on the surface, you can kind of see why, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like a 1.9610 split looks really bad. A 27-inch vert looks really bad. But when you look at kind
5'3",
of
840, not great.
Yeah, it's bad, right?
Yeah.
He's 321 pounds, and the most dispositive workout that you can get at that position is the short shuttle. And he did fine there for like kind of a weight adjusted short shuttle. He was actually a little bit better than you expect a 320-pound guy to be, which tells me that there is something potentially there. You probably want him to lose a little bit of weight. You bring him into the Vikings locker room and stuff like that. But I think from a workout perspective, it's actually not nearly that bad. I think that for the most part, his profile is a little bit more positive than average, which I think is really surprising for a lot of people based off of the way that he worked out, which I understand why people would be kind of hesitant about him, especially when you hear all this stuff about kind of what you want in a zone system, but not a huge issue for me. I wouldn't call him a standout, obviously, but like, not
I'm glad you pointed that out because he's taken a lot of heat. I mean, you see him in a lot of combine losers, right? For the offensive line group. By the way, I had to look up Tate Ratledge, and right above him, did you guys see Holland Pierce from Rutgers, the offensive lineman, what he measured in at? Holland Pierce. I don't even know who this guy is. I'm not gonna lie to you.
He was at the Shrine Bowl. He stood like he's tall, right? He's like so tall.
6'8" 3/4, 341, 88-inch wingspan, 36-inch arms. That's got to be the biggest of the group.
I think it is.
The wingspan. So usually your height usually matches your wingspan ish. So the wingspan is 7'4", and his height is 6'8". That's insane.
Yeah, just a
He had the longest wingspan by 3 inches at this year's combine.
Jeez.
Like, because it's like
a created player in Madden. This is ridiculous. I've never seen
him at 88-inch wingspan, and then another Shrine guy, Zeke Biggers, 85-inch wingspan below him, and then Alfred Collins also 85-inch wingspan.
Wow,
Shamar
Collins.
Stewart nearly 85-inch. So typically, like the most you get is like 86 at a combine. 88 is wow.
It's just funny because we go into the combine every year with all these like hype and rumors like this dude. Who is the Ohio State? The Browns drafted him, the tackle in the second, third round.
Jones?
Yeah, there's just all these like buzz and rumors and articles leading up to combine. This guy's going to measure in at blah, blah, blah. And then it usually disappoints. Like the dude is still a mammoth of a human, but like disappoints a little bit. I have never seen 6'8" 3/8. 341, 36-inch arms, 88-inch wingspan. I've just never seen that. So, monster.
I was taking a look at centers too, just in case the Vikings want to like be that aggressive and kind of take over the interior offensive line. And the 3 centers who actually did do short shuttle drills all were well above average, and they did it all over 300 pounds. Jared Wilson in particular stood out, doing it at 310 pounds, getting 4.56. Short shuttle. He had an outstanding athleticism score in both the Combine IQ model and in my model. I also liked Eli Cox and Drew Kendall. Eli Cox from Kentucky, Drew Kendall, Boston College. Again, these are just athleticism scores, right? So I don't know if these are good players. That's another thing to keep in mind. My understanding is that Eli Cox is bad at football. So who's to say, right? Whether or not, these combine standouts mean anything. But since we're here, since we just got out of the combine, these are the players that kind of stood out at the positions of need that I paid the most attention to, for the Vikings. There's obviously other positions, but I wanted to pay attention to that offensive line group because I thought that there was kind of a lot going on there. There's a lot of the corners ran super fast this year, so you're going to get a bunch of really great corners. Jacob Parrish, Caleb Bransaw, Darian Porter, I thought all looked fantastic in terms of like their athleticism profiles. Darian Porter, brave enough to run the short shuttles and 3 cones at 9 p.m. I want to give him extra credit for that. Also, he killed him. So he did really well despite having to run the short shuttles really, really late. But yeah, Darian Porter from Iowa State, which Iowa State has like 3 or 4 super athletes at this year's combine. Darian Porter, I thought looked really good. And then you take a look at how he did in some of the drills, the position drills. And I thought Porter showcased remarkable fluidity and, kind of discipline to stand his landmark and stuff like that. So, something to kind of keep in mind is that like, even in these position drills, some of these guys stand out.
Yeah, a lot of good points there. Center is kind of an intriguing group because there's no like clear-cut number one dude. The Georgia dude gets talked about a lot, at least up in that quote-unquote top tier with the top 2 or 3 guys. I'm blanking on his name right now, but I got to do
pairs on the other side of him too. That's a big thing for a center.
Yeah,
like had to coordinate different groups and stuff as guys were hurt and moving around.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. How about the South Carolina safety, Nick Eamon-Ware? Did you guys check out his?
He was a huge winner, right?
Dude is like built in a lab. 6'3", 220. I'm surprised. I've heard 230 a lot. Like 78.25-inch wingspan, but like physically, in comps you got to be careful with, but just physically, I heard a lot of like Cam Chancellor in the box kind of safety. So showing up at 220, I mean, he goes out and runs a 4.38, puts up a 43-inch vertical. You watch, a couple games or just even highlights. He brings that physical brand of football as a tackler in the box, but like dude's more than that. He's a ball hawk too. I know he had 4 picks, 2 for touchdowns. I know he had a 3rd touchdown call back versus LSU. So he's a natural ball hawk too when you're kind of defending the pass. But I mean, big enough on one play to like match up with the tight end, and then fast enough to go match up with like a slot receiver the very next play. So thumper downhill. Again, I'm actually surprised he only weighed 220. I've seen him listed closer to like 230. I don't know if he shed some weight to run that sub 440 or what, but checks a lot of boxes. A versatile kind of chess piece, I think. Flores, but really anybody would just have a lot of fun with. So I know everybody wants to go trenches at pick 24, which I do too. I just feel like if some guys aren't there, maybe you want to trade down, whatever it may be. Maybe they lose Cam Bynum and possibly Harrison Smith. Maybe safety's a huge need all of a sudden going into the draft. He's a playmaker through and through, and he's got the NFL size and speed for sure. He's got to be one of the top 5 like biggest winners, I feel like, of the combine.
Yeah, he had an outstanding combine. Would have liked to see the agilities again.
Yeah,
I blame the NFL more than the players. For moving these workouts around so that people just don't want to do the agility drills anymore. But would have been nice to see that because having a complete athletic package, I know that the short shuttle correlates pretty strongly, at least as far as athleticism goes, with safety play. And so you've got a guy with like a really good 40. You kind of want to see if you can change direction.
For sure. Too. Yeah. Maybe pro day.
Yeah, maybe, hopefully. But like that was a really, really outstanding performance from him, from Darian Porter. Like I mentioned, Darian Porter. So I think he's listed at 6'4". He measured in at the combine at 6'2" and 7/8, so 6'3", basically. But to have that kind of fluidity, like a sub 6'8" 3-cone, it's like a 6'7" 3-cone, at 6'3" is obscene. Like it's outstanding.
Unbelievable. Yeah.
Hopefully he can play football. But other than that, wow.
We'll worry about that later.
Any thoughts on that 4.28 corner out of Kentucky, Maxwell Hairston, who apparently can't tackle, but he can run really fast and can actually cover really well? Injury last year. Any read on Max?
Okay, so there is some stuff happening on social media regarding him. I can't speak to that. I checked in on that. It's potentially cloudy. But putting that aside, sorry about that. Putting that aside,
that's now 2 prospects that Arif has low-key smeared on this show, but he won't give us details.
Sam, it would be smearing if I gave you details that I haven't confirmed. All right, me saying that there's other people talking about it is actually just fine reporting, and I don't like that. Also, I was right. Like the James Pierce stuff that came out after the combine, people reported that he might drop out of the first 2 rounds because of these character concerns. Like that reporting came out like 2 days ago. So I was way right on that. But regardless, bye Luke. Regardless, I'm not that concerned about the Harrison stuff because I checked in on that and it doesn't seem to be as bad as is being portrayed right now, but it is one that we'd have to take into account. Anyway, my understanding of Hairston as a really good cover player is generally pretty positive. I checked in on him before he ran that because I had Thor Nystrom on Norse Code, and he shouted out Hairston as a guy that might be the fastest guy at the combine, which, congrats, Thor. Great call. He mentioned that, this is a guy that generally does a pretty decent job in coverage. Kentucky's a pretty difficult place to perform well in for a lot of reasons, but he's somebody I would pay attention to. His eyes are apparently pretty good, and that's, a really important element of this. He did all right in a lot of these positional drills. That's really important to see. So, he's somebody that I would like kind of keep an eye on, maybe do a little bit more checking to see kind of where you're at on him. But yeah.
That's a good report. I appreciate the thoroughness there. And we have one question from Alexander about Clay Webb and Jackson Slater, the 2 small school left guards in the draft. Clay Webb and Jackson Slater. I think both were fairly athletic at the combine. Both ran a little over 5 seconds in the 40. Presumably you could move them around, play some right guard. Maybe there's center possibilities with, I think with Webb might be considered a center at the next level. Any thoughts on them, Arif?
Yeah, so I don't know that much about Webb. I didn't actually see everything because he ran. I think he ran a slow short shuttle relative to kind of his position, and he didn't run a 3-cone or anything like that. So I didn't super check in on him. But Jackson Slater, I've heard a lot of really good things about. Like you mentioned, he had a really good, he had a really good showing, generally speaking, at the combine. He didn't get a short shuttle or a 3-cone, just because, like, and that again is like a really dispositive thing. But given how quick he ran at his size, which is 311 pounds, a lot of people are pretty impressed with him. Apparently, he's even faster than that on film. And so that's somebody to kind of take a look at. But I haven't looked at him personally. I was just checking in, and it seems like people are generally pretty happy with what Jackson Slater can provide, kind of like a dark horse to get into day 2. So somebody worth kind of like taking a second look at.
Sweet. Let's do a little 4-minute drill to end the show.
Start the clock. It's time to execute the 4-minute drill.
Hopefully Luke Inman comes back to us at some point. The computer is doing the thing that it usually does, and we wish him the best, and hopefully he can come back. Luke, Braun, and Arif Hasan will carry on. Tampering starts 1 week from today. I think we got to go live for the first portion of this because it could come fast. We could get some huge news early on Vikings signees or departures. I want your prediction on what the first domino will be for the Vikings post-tampering start. 1 week from today. Luke, Braun.
Does it count to say Sam Darnold signing a contract within 10 seconds of tampering opening with the Raiders or someone?
That 100%. That's a domino. Yep.
That feels like the first thing we're gonna see. The belle of the ball in free agency type of guy has just absolutely been talking all combine with people. Everybody knows. Everybody's been talking about, because the Vikings have been in those conversations too to try to figure out like their tag and trade ideas, and it sounds like they came away saying no to that. But Sam Darnold knows the offers. He now has between now and the tampering period to think about it, and you're gonna get a Schefter tweet within seconds of tampering opening. Just immediately, like, deal's been hammered out, and then you're gonna get everybody making the joke about how, oh, look how fast they went, because it clearly it's already gonna have been decided.
Just want to point out, by the way, on the Sam Darnold contract, I had suggested that the Vikings would intentionally lowball him with a $35 million offer. That was in Alec Lewis's piece. I am doing hot. All right. If we exclude Sam Darnold from this, because that was going to be my answer too, I'd say probably Byron Murphy, right? Like, maybe the Vikings agree to someone.
That might go before tampering.
Right. Yeah. Well, it opens the floodgates.
Yeah.
But, kind of getting your cap situation figured out with some of your key players before you can kind of like delve into the depths of other types of free agency. That would be, I think, really big for the Vikings. So I think, to me, it's Byron Murphy. I think a dark horse for that is probably an outside guard. So somebody like a Will Freeze. The chat, by the way, is mentioning Alex Kappa at guard, cut by the Buccaneers. Wanted you to play the sound, Sam. I have no opinion on whether or not you should play the sound for that. He was mediocre last year, but has generally been pretty good throughout his career. Exactly the kind of guy that the Vikings tend to target. So maybe you could revive his career. He is kind of getting up there in age, and maybe that's him falling off a cliff, or maybe that's
a guard reclamation project. The people are going to love that.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. That's
everybody will get real excited about a guy who's looking to revive his career.
Yeah. Discourse monsters that only just only bring in the discourse guys.
Yeah, the guys that will make the most toxic ideas come onto Twitter. Yep.
Perfect. Well, Luke, you're not even on Twitter anymore. What do you care?
Yeah, thank God.
How's life without?
Oh, it's fantastic. It's peaceful. It's beautiful.
Yeah, that's why I want you back on Twitter.
Yeah. So Arif wants me to go back to suffer. That's how it is. Yeah. No, it's fine. I mean, when I posted the show link to Blue Sky this morning, and people actually are clicking on it. It's incredible. The website works the way it's intended to.
It's like people.
Yeah, it doesn't crash constantly. It's great. It's a functional website.
Speaking of crashes, Luke Inman Welcome back.
Brought to you by the
predicting
Speaking crashes.
Mac Desktop 2023.
predicting the first domino.
It's insane.
What do you have
It's
on
my
there?
brain. I
Yeah, I
don't
don't
know,
understand.
dude. I don't know. Somebody
I'm gonna
in the
come over
comments-
there and
Please.
find you have like
I beg you.
terabytes of like Chinese data on there. And
It's just
Well,
20
is that
deep
bad?
models.
I thought that didn't take up a lot of space.
Bud.
he's running an entire AI on just that.
He's mining Bitcoin. He's just hoarding it. But
Yeah.
it's all meme coins. None of it's real. None of it's
Yeah.
not.
Safari's
Um,
great though. Yeah. No, it's
yeah.
great.
Inman,
Hey, can
we're
I mention
predicting-
real quick? Can I mention one
Yeah.
more guy? One more guy.
Let's do it.
Yeah, just real quick. We talked. Alec Lewis mentioned it. Vikes probably going to take a running back at some point. Just feels like that, anyways. Loaded class of running backs. This guy I know is kind of in the upper tier. It's like almost everybody's top 5 running back. It feels like, which maybe this is too rich for the Vikes with only 4 picks as of now. But it should also just tell you that he like how good he is in the consensus group chat. It feels like. But Omario Hampton, North Carolina. I thought he just backed it up. I thought he just backed up the tape. Shows up just under 6 foot, 220 pounds, though, which I love. And Luke and I were talking running backs the other day. I know he's one of your favorites that actually feels like a real game changer at the next level and a guy that
What did he
can
run?
make
'Cause
plays.
The whole thing was like top end speed
4.48
for me. With
4.48. So, not blazing
Actually.
by any means, but
better
I just
than
feel like,
didn't
No,
Caleb
his
Johnson run like a 4.5 something?
yeah, Caleb,
official was-
yeah.
His official was 4.46, by the way.
4.4.
Oh, was it?
Hampton.
Okay. Even,
That'll
a little
play.
Bit, a little bit better. Yeah, 4.46. But at 220, though, I really like that NFL size. I mean, he's a beast
Yeah.
on tape. Explosion, vision, contact balance, all that stuff.
Really
I just feel like,
decisive, gets through the hole. Yeah, I love it.
yeah, if you don't want to just be the team, and I'm okay with this route too, actually, this blueprint of just drafting a running back every year on day 3. If you just want to go find a dude, a difference maker for the next 4 or 5 years, I feel like he's going to make some team very happy. So Omario Hampton, I just thought backed up the pedigree and what everybody's been watching on tape, I feel like, and should be one of the top 5 running backs taken. Where that is, where the NFL values these running backs, I got no idea.
Yeah. In closing, Luke, we're predicting what we think will be the first domino to fall when tampering opens up a week from today. So Braun thinks that Sam Darnold signs a deal within 10 seconds of it opening. Arif Hasan thinks that Byron Murphy will sign his
Is
deal
this just
elsewhere.
Vikes specific or like
Someone
general
Vikes,
NFL?
yeah, Vikes
I didn't
related.
say elsewhere. I just said somewhere. It could be with the
Somewhere.
Vikings. Yeah.
Okay, could be Minnesota. I think that Byron Murphy signs with Baltimore, like hour 1.
Whoa.
I think that Murphy's
Hour
Murphy's
one.
toast.
Wow, Murphy's toast, huh?
Yeah.
Wow. I think Murphy.
Big rips.
I mean, even reading what we know about the Alec Lewis blurb about Byron Murphy, it just sounds like Byron Murphy does want to be back, and I know that's only part of the equation, but that it has to be one of the first prerequisites, though, too. So
Yeah,
I still
he
think
just wants
Murphy
his
wants to
number
come
to
back.
be.
But
He
yeah,
wants his
fair-
number to
fair
be as high
market.
as possible. Yeah.
yeah, absolutely, which I totally get. I mean, these guys deserve to get paid for sure. I think if I was a betting man, it would probably revert back to the quarterback position just because it's such a highly touted, everybody's obsessed with the quarterback. And there is still these handful of quarterback needy teams too with not a lot of options out there. Raiders, I cannot see Sam Darnold going back to New York. Not just the Jets, but even the Giants as well. But there's still other teams, Titans maybe, Raiders again with Pete Carroll. If I was a betting man, I just feel like a quarterback would be the first domino to fall.
Yeah, that would be the betting favorite, 100%.
Captain agrees. Captain agrees in the background there.
Excellent.
Dumb dog. The
Dang.
Whoa.
the show next week's gonna be good. Gonna be live for I don't know how long. We'll figure it out. What time does tampering open? We got to figure that out first.
Like
We'll
the 10th
revolve
or something
around
like
that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe want to go like I say this for scheduling reasons too, but maybe you want to go like a couple hours in to make sure that something has happened we can start talking about and then be live while stuff keeps flooding in.
That's a good idea. That's good scheduling. That's good executive producing on your part, Luke Braun. Smart guy. So watch for what time the show is scheduled for next Monday. But as for this week, Thursday, I'm guessing we get Harrison Smith news this week. You would think, right? Because the
I would
Vikings
hope.
have to know.
Yeah.
Vikings have
Maybe.
to know before Monday.
I
next
think if he
week.
does retire, they'd post June him anyways, so he might actually have till June. because like it won't affect the cap
Yeah.
either way, and it's not like it's going to affect your draft. He's not a long-term player, so you still would be into drafting a safety. He's going to retire eventually,
Got it. So you think that he may have told the team, but it might not be announced just for the function.
Not even that. He's saying that it doesn't.
Or it's just that he
matter
would
what
have that
decision
long
he
to
makes.
decide because the Vikings don't. It won't actually affect any of the Vikings' plans until then.
Yeah.
I've read though that there's a March 15th deadline.
Oh, I forgot about
Yeah.
that. You're right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And yes, Macho Meach, we're going to be blasting the sound
Oh, no.
on the tampering show.
It's all news, Sam. It's all news. All right. Okay.
All right.
Just one for the road.
There's a roadie for you. There you go.
Thank you for watching and listening to the Minnesota Football Party. We appreciate it. And please subscribe if you haven't. Locked on Sports Minnesota. Luke Braun, Locked on Vikings. Luke Inman, postcast after every Wolves game, Twins game, Vikings games, Gophers games. Arif Hasan, Wide Left Substack. Thanks a lot once again. We'll talk to you next time on the Minnesota Football